4.4 is on solving rational, and instead of expressions, let's write the word equations. Solving rational equations. So a rational equation contains one or more rational expressions. To solve rational equations, we want to clear the fractions first. So we'll talk about how we do that, then solve like a regular equation. If the equation is a proportion, so a proportion is when I have A over B equals C over D, then we can cross multiply. So let's look at number 1. It's a rational equation. We have rational expressions. So let's ask ourselves first, is it a proportion? Let's see, it looks like something over something equals something over something. Yes, so we can cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I'm going to go across the equal sign and do 4 times x minus 7 equals, cross the equal sign, 1 times x plus 2. Now I can solve this just like a normal equation. Distribute the 4, distribute the 1. For x minus 28 equals x plus 2. I'm going to subtract the x over to here. 3x minus 28 equals 2. Add the 28. 3x equals 30. Divide by 3. X equals 10. Now we have to check for our excluded values. So we look back up and we look at the denominators, and remember the excluded values happen because our denominator cannot equal 0. So let's look at both denominators. I have x plus 2 and 4. Here we get an excluded value of x cannot equal negative 2. If I had negative 2, I'd have negative 2 plus 2, which would give me 0 in this denominator. This is saying x equals 10, so that's okay. We can have that as an answer. Go ahead and try number 2. Go pause the video so that the students can try number 2. Now that you've had time to try number 2, let's go through the steps. Is it a proportion? Yes. Let's skip this over. So we cross multiply. 2x times x is 2x squared equals 3 times x squared minus 3. We need to distribute there. So I get 2x squared equals 3x squared minus 9. So I'm going to subtract the 2x squared, because whenever we have an x squared, we want to get everything to one side, and it's set equal to 0. 3x squared minus 2x squared is x squared, and then I have minus 9. So why did I bring the negative 2x squared over again? When half x squared gets set equal to 0 to factor. And can I factor this? Yes, I get x minus 3 x plus 3, it's the difference of squares. So I get x equals 3 when I set that one equal to 0, and negative 3 when I set that one equal to 0. So we can't forget to check our excluded values. So what are our excluded values? Well, from this denominator, I get that x cannot equal 0. From this denominator, I get that x squared minus 3 cannot equal 0. So I add the 3 over. X squared cannot equal 3. Take the square root. X cannot equal plus or minus root 3. So it looks like we're good. And that's our answer. Number 3. So let's ask ourselves our first question. Is this a proportion? No. Remember, when there's a proportion, we'd have to have A over B equals C over D, but we have this other piece here. So when we have two fractions added together on one side, it's not a proportion. So what does this mean? We're going to clear the fraction with your least common denominator. So let's find our LCD, least common denominator. Let's see, I have a 2x, 4x, and 4. So this is going to give me 4 because 2, 4, and 4, the least common multiple is 4. And then I'm going to need an x. And now we're going to times every fraction by 4x. Notice I had 1, 2, 3 fractions. I'm timesing 1, 2, 3, 4 x's. Here, 2 goes into 4 twice, and then I have x and x. Here my 4x's cross out, and here the 4's cross out. So what do I have left? 2 times 1 is 2 equals, that was crossed out, so it's a 1, so that's 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 times x is 3x. Minus 5. Divide by 3. X equals negative 1. But we can't settle yet. We have to check for excluded values. So let's see. This denominator tells us x cannot equal 0. This denominator tells us x cannot equal 0. So since x equals negative 1, we are good. Example 4. Solve and check each solution. Before I let you get started on your own on this one, I want you to put the 17 over 1. That denominator is 1. So let's ask our first question. Is this a proportion? No. So we're going to clear the fraction. So that's like example 3. So go ahead and pause the video so the students can try and follow what they did in example 3. Now that you've had time to work on example 3, example 4, let's find our least common denominator. My denominators are 2x, 1, and x, so my LCD is 2x. I'm going to times everything by 2x, even the 17. 2x and 2x, that clears. X and x. So I get 5 times, remember, if that all goes away, this is a 1. So 5 times 1 is 5. 2x times 17 is 34x. 6 times 2 is minus 12. Add the 12. I get 17 equals 34x. Divide by 34. X equals 1/2. Because 17 and 34, that's 1/2. Before we have commit to this answer, we have to check. How do we check? What are our excluded values? It looks like x cannot equal 0. So we are good. For example 5, we're going to start by asking ourselves our first question. Is it a proportion? Now remember, a proportion is if it's like a over b equals c over d. So one fraction on both sides. Yes, it is. So then we can cross multiply. So that means we have x minus 1 times x plus 2 equals x squared plus 2x minus 3 times x plus 2. Notice that we have an x plus 2 on both sides, so I can divide by x plus 2. And I'm left with x minus 1 equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. When I'm a quadratic, get one side set equal to 0. We're going to minus x plus 1. Because our whole goal is to factor. So I have 0 equals x squared plus x minus 2. Now we get to factor. Go ahead and factor your trinomial. We have x and x. And then multiplies to 2. I have a 2 and a 1. This gives me a positive 2x, negative x, so that's positive x. So this gives me the solutions x equals negative 2, positive 1. Before we can commit, though, we have to check excluded values. I'm going to zoom out a little. Let's look at our denominators. Here, x cannot equal negative 2. Here, x cannot equal negative 2. We do have that as an option, but we can't equal that, so we cross that one out. So x equals 1. For example 6, we ask ourselves our question, is it a proportion? No, we have two fractions on this side, so it's not a proportion. And so then our method to helping us solve this is to clear the fraction. And we do that by finding our least common denominator. So for our least common denominator, it looks like I have a denominator of x plus 1. And then I have a denominator of x plus 4. And then I don't have to rewrite that one again. So I'm going to multiply every single fraction by x plus 1 times x plus 4. All right. And so for this first fraction, the denominator and the x plus 1 cross out. So I'm left with x times x plus 4. Here my x plus 4's cross out. So I'm left with plus 3 times x plus 1. Here, my x plus 4 crosses out. I'm left with x plus 3 times x plus 1. And now we just have a normal equation to solve. On the left, we're going to distribute. On the right, we're going to do our FOIL. So go ahead and do those. On the left, we should get x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 3 equals x squared plus 3x plus x plus 3. Now we can combine our like terms. I notice I have an x squared on both sides, so I can cross that out. Subtract the 4x over. Subtract the 3. Divide by 3. And 0 divided by 3 gives me x equals 0. Now we have to check for our excluded values. So here I get x cannot equal -1. And here I get x cannot equal -4. That's not either of those, so our answer is x equals 0. For number 7, they're giving us this rational equation, and they're telling us f of x equals x plus 2. So I'm going to take my x plus 2 and put it wherever I see f of x. So let's go ahead and write our equation. I have 2, and instead of f of x, I'm going to write x plus 2 equals, instead of f of x, I'm going to write x plus 2. Instead of f of x, I'm going to write x plus 2, and then I have plus. This can be simplified. So 2 minus 2 is going to give me an x on top. Are we a proportion? No, we have 2 items over here, so we're not. So we're going to look for our least common denominator. This 6 is over 1. So my least common denominator, looking at these, is going to be x plus 2. So I'm going to times that by all 3 fractions. These ones crossed out, so I'm just left with 2 equals. These ones crossed out, so I'm left with x plus 6 times x plus 2. You can distribute here. So I get 2 equals x plus 6x plus 12. I'm going to continue over here. 2 equals x plus 6x is 7x plus 12. I combine the x and the 6x. We can subtract 12. I get -10 equals 7x. Divide by 7. X equals -10 over 7. Check our excluded value. Our excluded value is, if I look back, here I have x plus 2, x plus 2, so x cannot equal -2, so we're fine. So our answer is x equals -10 over 7. Okay, let's go to number 8. For number 8, before we do anything, we need to see what factors are here. So we need to factor it. I get x multiplies to 10. Let's try 2 and 5, because that'll give me a 2x, and a 5x, that'll give me a 7x. We're not a proportion because we have 2 fractions on the left, so we need a least common denominator. I need an x plus 2. I have an x plus 2. I need an x plus 5. And I have an x plus 5. So we're going to multiply that by every single fraction, x plus 2, x plus 5. And go ahead and pause the video so the students can have time to try and work through the rest. Now that you've had time, here my x plus 2 crosses out, so I'm left with x times x plus 5. Here my x plus 2 crosses out, x plus 5 crosses out, so I'm left with plus 3 equals. Here my x plus 5 crosses out, so I'm left with 3 times x plus 2. I'm going to distribute. I get x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals 3x plus 6. X squared means I'm going to have to factor, so I'm going to subtract the 3x, subtract the 6, because I need to get it set equal to 0. Now I can factor. Let's see. So if I have a positive 3x minus x, that gives me 2x. So x equals negative 3, positive 1. What are our excluded values? X cannot equal, here's negative 2 and negative 5. So we're good. Last one. All right, so this piece tells us we're going to do f minus g and set it equal to 0. So here's my f. Here's my g equals 0. Now, we're not a proportion. So let's see, this is 0 over 1. I need to factor this to see what's there. It's a difference of squares, so that's x plus 2, x minus 2. So what's our least common denominator going to be? We're going to have an x plus 2. And then here I'm going to need an x minus 2. So that's what we're going to multiply by every single fraction. X plus 2, x minus 2. X plus 2, x minus 2. X plus 2, x minus 2. These x plus 2's cross out. This x plus 2, that x plus 2, that x minus 2, that x minus 2, and nothing crosses out there. So here I have 4 times x minus 2. I have nothing left here, so it's minus 6 equals 0 times anything is going to give me 0. Let's distribute. Combine like terms. Add your 14 over. Divide by 4. X equals 7 over 2. Now, what are excluded values? X cannot equal -2 or +2. So we are good.